Welcome to Effective Rainmaking for Women Lawyers, presented by the American Bar Association Young Lawyers Division and co-sponsored by the ABA Career Center and ABA Commission on Women in the Profession. Before we get started, feel free to drop your practice area and/or years of experience in the chat. Moderating the program today is Lexi Lux. Lexi is Senior Corporate Counsel for Extended Stay America Hotels, where she has a dual function as both business partner and legal counsel, including partnering with and managing outside counsel on the company's litigation. She also serves as the 2022-2023 Director of Professional Development for the ABA Young Lawyers Division. Lexi, we'll turn things over to you.
Yes, thank you. As indicated, my name is Lexi Lutz and I am your moderator. Today you are in for a motivating and educational presentation. Today's program is meant for female lawyers aspiring to become partners or start their own law practice, or who have already done so and will be expected to generate new business. This is not a skill that's taught in law school or any other academic course. Developing a book of business can provide a lawyer a wider range of career and leadership opportunities, and women who lack the role models or guidance that men may receive on rainmaking or who lack confidence will have a greater challenge in cultivating a book of business. We are grateful to have 3 women lawyers that will provide guidance on their strategies for building their own books of business. Before we dive into the discussion, let's take a moment to introduce our esteemed faculty. First, Haley White is a partner at James McElroy Deal in Charlotte, North Carolina. As a partner focusing on family law, Haley regularly handles challenging family law matters that have a lasting and significant impact. Haley graduated magna cum laude from Louisiana State University in Shreveport with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. She received her Juris Doctor from Washington and Lee University. Next, Stephanie Peterman is a partner at Leidecker's Miami office. Stephanie's practice involves all aspects of federal and state civil trial litigation, with a primary focus on premises liability, labor and employment litigation, directors and officers, and civil rights litigation. Stephanie received her bachelor's degree from Florida State University and her JD from Florida State University College of Law. And finally, last but not least, we have Candice Veneras-Baez, who is the Director of Legal Affairs at the Hard Rock International. Candice manages all global litigation for the Hard Rock enterprise and provides legal counsel for all aspects of employment and human resource practices. Prior to joining Hard Rock International in 2018, Candice was a partner at the national labor and employment law firm Fisher Phillips. Of course, this is just the highlight reel of our accomplished panel. I welcome you to read their extensive bios online. A few program reminders. Quickly, just want to set up what you can expect from today's panel. This will be a moderated discussion of challenges and strategies for women rainmakers. I understand that some of you have submitted questions during registration. We're also going to be taking live questions, which if we have time, hopefully we will have time to answer. And then after that, we'll try to get to the pre-registration questions. All right, again, I'd like to welcome our distinguished faculty, Haley, Stephanie, and Candice. I'm thrilled you could join us. Welcome. Let's dive in. Before we get too deep into content, can each of you take a quick moment to share a bit about your backgrounds apart from what we've already shared and what perspectives on rainmaking you're bringing into the panel today? Haley, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Haley White. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I moved to Charlotte in 2015 after I graduated from law school, and I've exclusively practiced family law at the same firm since I graduated law school. My dad is a solo practitioner in Louisiana, and he started his own firm when I was in elementary school. So I grew up in his office, running around, watching him build his firm from the floor up. And, he did all of the networking and the community involvement and word of mouth, everything that I know, the majority of what I know, I learned from him. And it's funny because he practiced mostly family law, and growing up in his office, I always said, I will never practice family law, but here I am practicing only family law and loving it. So that's a little bit about me.
Great, thank you, Haley. Stephanie, how about you? What background informs your lens?
Yes, thank you, Lexi. As Lexi stated before, my name is Stephanie Peterman. I'm a shareholder at Lydecker in Miami. We're a national law firm. I personally was born and raised in Miami. Both my parents are Cuban and they emigrated to the US in the 60s. So I'm the first in my family to go to law school, to be a lawyer. And honestly, it really has motivated me in terms of reaching to continue progressing my career. And I am happy to join this discussion and share my insights with everybody today, and hopefully give everybody some pointers and things that weren't really taught in law school. It's things I think you learn once you're in the field.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. Candice, what about you?
Hi, everyone. As Lexi mentioned, my name is Candice Pinares-Baez. I've been in practice now. I don't even want to say it because it's aging me, but I've been in practice now for 16 years, 4 of them as in-house counsel for Hard Rock International, and the majority of the balance at a national law firm, Fisher Phillips, worrying about billable hours, the origination credit, making contacts, etc. So I guess you can say that I'm intimately familiar with both sides of the relationship. Well, I wasn't too shabby at business development in my past life at a private firm. There are certainly things that I know now from working in a high-paced global organization that could have helped me then, like seeing the customer perspective.
Absolutely. Thank you, Candice. I think you all bring different perspectives, unique perspectives to share. So we're excited to have each of you. Next question for the panel is, rainmaking or business development obviously has a general definition, but would like to find out what this term means to you as far as in your specific practice area. Haley, as our family law partner, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. To me, when I think of business development, it means autonomy to me. And the structure of my firm is such that when you start out as an associate, you work for all of the different partners. And so you're just running around like a mad woman, popping out memos for this person, going to court with this person, trying to, manage everybody's expectations. And then as you advance, you become dedicated to 1 or 2 partners. And then as you advance more, and that's where I am, you're building your book of business. Ultimately, you only work for yourself and you only have your clients. But the only way to do that is to actually build your book of business and have a sustainable revenue generating such that it makes sense that you're not working for the other partners anymore. So, building your book of business, calling your own shots, and doing great work for your clients it's a fantastic way to build and achieve confidence, build your practice, which leads to success in the legal field, which is, I think, the ultimate goal for all of us here today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Haley. Stephanie, as our civil litigation shareholder, what do you think?
Yeah, Haley, I agree. Coming up in the industry, you start off as an associate and try to figure out how to get more work. I found myself, probably 10 years ago, sitting in my office trying to figure out how I could gain some autonomy in my big firm and how I could develop a team that I led and how could I feed my team. And that really is what inspired me to march into Lydecker's office and demand an opportunity to market. I think rainmaking or business development means really fostering long-term relationships and investing time into people who, whether or not in the long run they turn out to develop and give you business in return, for nothing else, those friendships and relationships ultimately I have found give you business. So in my opinion, I think the secret or like the rainmaking is more about investing in long-term relationships with individuals who are in your industry. And if business comes of it, great. But I think most people like to do business with friends. And that's kind of what I try to keep in my mind as I develop my network.
Wonderful. Absolutely. Thank you, Stephanie. Candice, based on your experience as a partner and now in-house, what does business development mean to you?
Yeah, so I have a very similar background to Stephanie in that I'm a first generation American and first to go to college, first to be a lawyer. So I was extremely naive when I graduated from law school and thought to myself, I'm just going to do really good work. I might speak at a conference once in a blue moon and I'm going to get Target and Walmart to be my clients because I'm just awesome and everyone should know it, right? And that's very naive and certainly untrue. It's so much more than that. So, I certainly echo what both Haley and Stephanie said about building relationships. And I think that that's absolutely true. My mentor, when I joined the law firm, said, you got to plant seeds and water them over time. And you're not going to get a tree, an oak tree, after a year. It might take 5 years. It might take 10 years. But maybe that relationship that you forge with a young attorney today, they become general counsel 5, 6, 7 years from now in a huge firm. But in addition to that, I think one piece of business development that young lawyers don't focus on is really establishing yourself internally in your firm and externally as highly skilled in an area, whether it be civil litigation, whether it be family law, whether it be employment law. I think that goes also a long way for people to think, oh, employment law, Candice, I know she's an employment attorney, and calling you.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's go a step further. And Candice, you kind of touched on it briefly. So why is business development important specifically for young lawyers to learn? And how has the understanding of this skill impacted your career? Being either starting at a young lawyer or maybe you didn't start as a young lawyer with this skill. Stephanie, would you kick us off with sharing your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's important for young lawyers to kind of learn the process by which we all derive a profit, right? At the end of the day, we all work for profit. It's not, unfortunately, not a not-for-profit institution. Most of our firms aren't, at least companies. And I think it's important for young associates or young lawyers to learn the importance of, like Candice said, getting yourself known in your industry, but also fostering those relationships. Sometimes as a young associate or young lawyer, you don't have the face-to-face, day-to-day interactions with the high-up decision makers in corporations that might be able to drive and send you some business. But I think it's more important to focus on being available, being responsive, and adding value. Because at the end of the day, what we are in is a customer service industry, right? And if somebody knows that if they call you, you answer the phone and you can give them meaningful advice, whatever it may be, that person's going to think of you time and time again. And as a young associate, I saw it quite often when I made friends with the risk managers at various companies, and they knew to call me, right? Because I would be answering my phone where my partner maybe was off on another meeting. And I think it was important at that stage in my career to learn to develop that relationship or that friendship, because that person is going to know they can count on you. And if they can count on you, I think 9 times out of 10, they're going to call you for advice, which will ultimately result in some sort of business generation.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. Candice, what about you?
I absolutely agree with that. I can tell you now, being, the decision maker on who we hire, when I get a referral, if it's an area of the law or in a jurisdiction that perhaps I don't have personal contacts with, if I call and I don't get a response within 24 hours, when you're on the business side, sometimes you're just moving so quickly, there isn't time to wait for, the partner to call, or there's not time to wait for 2 days to get a response to an email. So literally responsiveness to me sometimes is up to 50% of the reason why I hire an attorney, right? It's easy when you're in your law practice, there's a lot going on. You've got hearings, you've got depots, you've got client meetings, you've got phone calls. But if you get an email from a client, whether it's a tried and true client or a new prospective client, even just reaching out to me and saying, hey, Candice, I got your email. I'm in the middle of a depot, but first thing tomorrow, I'm going to respond, or I will get you the answer. Or here's, an expert or a colleague in another office that might be able to help you with this in my absence. Those are the people that I rely on, right? I want to look good to my business partners, internal stakeholders. And the way that I make that happen, because I don't know every law in the United States or the world, and I can't represent us personally in every jurisdiction, is to have trusted partners that I know if the CEO calls me and says, Candice, I need this answer right away, I can call somebody that's going to get me that answer or find a way to get me that answer right away. And that in business development, I mean, it really cannot be minimized in any way. It's just so important.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to echo what Candice is saying, I agree with everything. Also being in-house, in the moment, we aren't thinking about what law school do they go to? How many ABA journal articles do they have published? We're thinking who's going to get back to me, A, quickest, and B, who's going to get me a quick answer and not 10-page memo when I'm not asking for one. So yes, thank you, Candice. Haley, what about you?
Yeah, I echo everything that Candice and Stephanie said. I would say I also think it's important to build and foster your relationships with your team, that the people that work with you, because your paralegal, your assistant, your couriers, your receptionist, everyone, they are crucial to building your book of business. When you're out at a meeting, if you have a good assistant that'll step up and say, so-and-so, she received your email, she's at a meeting, that makes the clients feel good, feel heard. Also, I think it was already mentioned, just kind of developing that good relationship with your clients, being responsive, doing good work for your clients. That's the piece of advice that I get time and time again when I'm asking my mentors, how do I build my book of business? And they say, you do good work, they will keep coming back, they will send people to you. And I think that's true. I think there are other factors now. It used to be just word of mouth, right? We didn't have the internet, you didn't have social media, all that stuff. It used to be strictly word of mouth. I still think word of mouth and doing good work is the crux of your business development. But now, I think we'll get into it in a little bit. You've got the marketing aspect that we'll talk about in a little bit too.
Yes, great. Thank you, Haley. So now that we have identified the importance of business development, I think we can all agree on that, and especially for young lawyers. Now let's address some challenges specific to women attempting to be rainmakers. So what are some challenges that you personally can identify for our panelists? Candice, what are your thoughts?
So, I mean, while it's much better today than it was even when I started practicing 16 years ago. But there still certainly remains some vestiges of sexism and the notion that, white male executives, decision makers want white male attorneys to represent them. And I'm not minimizing that, still exists to some extent in the majority of our society. But I truly believe that women can be our own biggest challenge at times. Studies show that women think of business contacts. When they think of business contacts, they focus on the value of the connection and the relationship itself, which I think is fantastic. And I'm not saying that should be minimized. In fact, I think that's the most important thing. However, the same studies show that men think about potential yield, like what can I get out of this relationship or this business context? So they focus their intention and their communications, and they're very mindful of working to that result, right? Positive yield. What can I get from this? Men also view business relationships as having reciprocal value, right? Like, what can I bring to you? What can you bring to me? And they're not shy about stressing their value to business contacts. Women are generally less likely to feel comfortable tooting their own horn or discussing their value with a new business partner. So I think that we should have, strong business developers should have best of both worlds, right? Our relationship instincts are really focusing on the intrinsic value and deepening connections so that people think of us as friends, as Stephanie mentioned, and look to us to have business relationships with, but not shy away from the more assertive or what's generally thought of as male characteristics of being assertive in our communications, discussing what value we can bring. There's nothing wrong with having a friend and also discussing, what services and value you can bring. If they're going to hire somebody, why shouldn't it be you?
Yeah, that is great. Thank you, Candice. Haley, what are your thoughts?
I agree with Candice. I faced and still face challenges. For example, I ultimately added attorney to my email signature because so many people would just assume that I was a paralegal or staff, and they say, no, we need to talk to the attorney who's on this case. I am the attorney. That's why I'm reaching out to you. Or I'd be in a meeting with one of my partners at the time, and the client would ask a question and I would answer the question, and he would look at my partner and say, well, no, I want to know what you think the answer is to my question. And he would say, it's what Haley just told you. That's the answer. So I don't know if that will ever stop. I hope it does. But you just have to don't let it discourage you. You just have to keep pushing on. To what Candice said about being assertive in your communications. Yes, do that. You're going to be called bad words. I've been called every name under the sun for doing something that a man would do, for writing an email the way a man would write it, for making an argument that a man would make. Yes, so those are certainly challenges. Another challenge that women face, if you choose to have a family, I have a 1.5-year-old now, but that adds a whole new layer of challenges and new fields to navigate in the not only just your practice and keeping it going, but in building your book of business. It's very difficult. You have half the time and half the energy, but you're supposed to be doing more and doing more. So those are certainly challenges that are difficult for women.
Absolutely. Thank you, Haley. Stephanie, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with both of their positions. I think, especially what Candice said, being assertive. I don't think men are nearly as afraid to ask for things and demand things as sometimes women are. And I found myself in a position trying to figure out how to grow my book of business and my team. And I just had to ask for it. I demanded the opportunity to be able to market and travel with the men in my firm. And my boss at the time was a little caught off guard when I said, I want to travel, I want to market, send me to New York, let me go meet with all the insurance companies. And he was like, wow, I never thought about it, but yeah, let's give you that opportunity, but also I think women have to be prepared to jump in and take the opportunity when given, regardless when it presents itself, because sometimes, you'll be given an opportunity and you're a little hesitant because it might be uncomfortable. And it's really hard to kind of put your personal feelings aside and kind of throw yourself into it. But if you don't throw yourself into it and kind of take the bull by the horns, you're never going to be given that opportunity again. So I think really being assertive and following through, but also what Haley touched on in terms of women who, we're expected to do it all, be the mom, be the wife, be the boss, be the attorney, right? And I think the second you accept that you're never going to be great at everything, right? So when I'm excelling at being a great lawyer and I'm marketing and I'm traveling for work, I know in the back of my mind that I'm not the greatest mom that day, right? Because I'm not at home with my 2 kids and I'm not going to be the greatest wife that day. But as long as right? Because I don't know, I think it's kind of a cliche when it's like, you can have it all. You can't. And as soon as you can accept you can't have it all and focus, right? And make time and schedule, like, I know after a certain time, I am responsive on my emails, but I also want to be present with my kids at home. So for the little time I am home, I try to focus on them and give them all my attention. But I think the second you accept, right, that you're not going to have it all the time, I think it really makes you at peace a little more and allows you to focus on those things that you need to focus on to excel. Also, I think imposter syndrome is real, right? Even being here today, speaking on this panel, sometimes I wonder, like, how did I don't deserve it, right? But I think women and minorities tend to feel like a subconscious bias against yourself, whether you know it or not, just because of things society has put on us. And one of my mottos since I started practicing 15 years ago was fake it till you make it, right? I think if you exude that confidence, people will believe in you. And it's not that you don't know what you're talking about. I think sometimes just we get caught off guard and we can't believe that we actually have achieved those things that make us entitled to be at the table, right? And I think women doubt themselves. So I think, really exuding that confidence and people will believe in you helps a lot.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie. Next, now that we've addressed the challenges, I think y'all brought up some very common challenges, imposter syndrome being the last one, which I'm sure everyone who's on this is guilty of. Let's turn to elements of success. So, but also many of the challenges faced by women in rainmaking can also be potentially elements of success. So what do you believe are the elements of success in business development? Haley, let's start with you.
Yeah, so in my firm, I have what I consider two mentors. One is male and one is female. And I've been working with the male for 7 years, the female for maybe 4, but they're both fantastic, huge rainmakers, awesome lawyers. The male told me, a long time ago, he said, you need to take every single consult, don't turn any clients down. And he would keep clients, long after they should have been fired for not following advice, whatever the case may be. And then the woman told me, it's important to figure out what type of practice you want to have, what type of clients you want to have, what type of cases you want to have, and be pickier, be more intentional with the clients you choose and the clients you retain. And so I think both of those pieces of advice are really good. Always be looking for more clients. If you have the capacity, take as much as you can, but don't overdo it. And also, have a vision in your mind of what type of practice you want to have, because, I think if you take every single client that calls you up, or you bend over for a client who's a pain and not appreciative, the chances that unappreciative, difficult client is going to send you referrals is slim. And, maybe you don't even want the referrals that person is sending. So why waste your precious time and energy on those undesirable clients when you could be devoting it to your more deserving clients who are appreciative of your time and your effort and are going to send you referrals? I just think we need to be more intentional with our time and our effort and our decisions. I think that'll go far in sustaining us and keeping, lawyers famously have high percentages of depression and anxiety. And so I think being more intentional with what we're doing every day and what we're choosing to focus our time on and our energy on is going to go a long way in sustaining us and keeping our mental health happy.
Yes, no, mental health is important, and it definitely would affect your own ability to be able to bring in business. So yeah, that's a great point. Thank you, Haley. Stephanie, what about you?
Yeah, so I think my perspective is a little different than Haley's in the sense that the nature of our business in insurance defense is getting assignments from adjusters who are in sometimes very far off cities who don't know you from anybody else, right? And if you can imagine how many law firms there are across the country that do the same thing we do, I've learned over time that I think in order to succeed in this developing business, 3 key factors, right? Patience, persistence, and perseverance. Patience in the sense that just one lunch or one dinner or one happy hour isn't naturally going to turn into work, right? And you need to develop a system on following up with people and making sure they think of you next time they get a case in your area of the law, right? But persistence in continuing to put yourself out there, not getting deterred if you don't get an immediate result from that meeting, right? You can't imagine how many happy hours, how many dinners, how many lunches I've been to with people who I follow up with and I never hear from them again, right? But I don't think that naturally should be a deterrent. I think if anything, you go to 5 lunches and maybe one person calls you back. But if you continue following up with them, and I think that goes to developing a system, right? You figure out what your audience is and who you want to target. You have to kind of put yourself out there, and it's super awkward to tell a stranger, do you want to go have drinks? But Sometimes that's really the uncomfortableness. And once you put yourself out there and you make yourself a little more vulnerable, a little more likable, and then following up with those people after and adding value, right? So what I try to do is market and offer services that are things people need. So continuing education credits, seminars on topics that people really need to do their job. So bad faith or premises liability, things that adjusters who assign cases need to know on their daily basis, so that next time they get that type of case, they think, oh, Stephanie in Miami, she covers the whole state of Florida. I'm going to send that to her because she was really informative in that seminar. And then perseverance in terms of, it is a men's world. It's gotten a lot better than obviously 10, 15 years ago. I think there's a lot more women in the legal industry right now, but a lot of times the decision makers are a little stuck in their ways in the big corporations and want to go to the to events that maybe women would be more uncomfortable going to, right? So I am not ashamed to say I'm not going to go to that because that's not something that I feel comfortable doing, but I'm more than happy to meet you here, there, wherever, right? Not being discouraged when you realize that this is still somewhat a man's world and a man's industry. But I think if you keep those things in mind and kind of keep it as your mantra and focus and follow up with people, it really does result in long-term sustainable relationships that help you develop your network.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. That's great advice. And I'm just going to pause here. We're about to get into the exciting world of marketing. But I do want to pause here and remind our audience, thanks again, y'all, for joining. But please know that you can submit questions to our panel via the Q&A function. So, like I said, we're going to prioritize the live questions today. So feel free to put those in as you think of them, particularly during this next section, which is marketing. So to go a step further, how do you market yourself for our panelists, and what are the steps for doing so? Stephanie, this question pairs nicely with your work. So what is your insight on this?
Yeah, so marketing, I think self-promotion is key. Don't be afraid to, if you write an article and it gets published, to post about it. I think LinkedIn is great. Whenever I have a client, Lexi, when you and I started working together, the first thing I did was look you up on LinkedIn and request you. I think it's huge to put a face to the name because we all are inundated with thousands of emails on a daily basis. But when you can connect that name and that signature line to the email to a face, it makes it a little more personal, and it's the first step, I think, in developing that relationship. So I think that's huge in terms of marketing. LinkedIn is great. Also, I think as soon as you run your own race and don't compare yourself to others, that's really helps you get a step up in marketing. And also trying to think outside the box. I think COVID had presented a unique situation where the traditional office relationships weren't present anymore, right? People were working from home. So how do you get across to people who are at home every day? And personally, here at our firm, we had to think outside the box. How can we, if we can't fly to New York and get in front of our clients anymore, how do we connect and communicate with them? And we did during COVID virtual wine tastings, tequila tastings, a baking class for clients where we would ship out boxes of sugar and stuff, and all together with our families bake a German chocolate cake with an amazing baker. But just trying to think outside the box and get across to people so that they think of you next time that they have an issue and that they can rely on you is really good. And I think more traditionally, for people starting out in the legal field, find something you're passionate about and get involved in it, and maybe write an article and see if you can get it published, because that's really the most basic form, I think, of marketing yourself.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. Candice, what about you?
Sure. So, I echo a lot of the things Stephanie said. I think that it's also important for those of you who are starting your legal career to know, who are you? Who do you want to be in your legal profession? What type of law? What do you want to be known for? and then marketing that both externally through many of the channels that Stephanie mentioned, but also internally for those of you that are full service law firms. You know, it's equally as important to market within. That can create relationships. When a partner gets a case that's employment law and you're the employment attorney, they'll pass it over to you. Now you've made a connection. That person will refer somebody to you. So I think that's important. I also took part in some virtual wine tastings by some of the firms that service Hard Rock. We did a baker too. It might have been Lydecker, I don't know. But I agree, being creative, reaching out. As far as giving value, I'll tell you this. When I have a law firm that comes to me and says, you know, Candice, you said you were looking for a new, whatever, public relations policy, or you're updating your handbook. If they're nickel and diming me and they're saying that's going to cost you $1,400, you know, if I love the firm and we have an established relationship, great. But if a firm comes to me and says, hey, Candice, you know, here's, so you said you needed a public relations policy. Here's a public relations policy. Do you think we can provide some training for your folks? That goes a long way, not because Hard Rock can't pay $1,500, right? I mean, of course we can, but it's just the gesture of goodwill. So adding value to the clients, I think that's a really easy way to do it. If you take half an hour of your time and do a free training for a new client, I can assure you that when there's a new lawsuit that's come in, or when there's an arbitration that's come in, your inside counsel is going to be looking at that, and they're going to be thinking of you and saying, hey, they looked out for me then, you know, let's see how it'll work with this litigation piece or whatever it may be.
Great. Thank you, Candice. Haley?
Yeah, I find it incredibly difficult to market myself, imposter syndrome, what have you, all of that we struggle with every day. But we all know how important marketing is today. My firm was pretty traditional when I started, in that we had a website, and it was a good website, but we didn't do any marketing. We didn't have any social media, no LinkedIn, nothing like that. And we hired a marketing director a few years ago. She's gone now, but she taught us a lot about marketing. And it's about, you know, think about 3 things that are important to you, 3 interests, 3 organizations, and go get involved in those things. 3 might be too many for you. You know, that's kind of a lot to think about, the time commitment, but you know, even 1 or 2, but just make sure it's something that you're interested in, so that when you're networking, most of us hate networking, but when you're networking, you can at least have people with common interests, and you can make some meaningful connections there. You know, social media is very important. We have social media pages now, and I will repost my firm's posts on my own social media to remind everyone in my circle, you know, my Facebook friends, my Instagram friends, that I am a lawyer, because all of the people that you know need to know that you're a lawyer, and they need to be reminded that you're a lawyer, because next time they need a lawyer, or their friend needs a lawyer, or their boss needs a lawyer, they'll say, oh, you know what, my friend Haley is a lawyer, and I think her firm does, you know, every type of law. Let me call her up. I think that's very important, is just to continue to be present on people's minds. And, you know, I know a lot of lawyers who will post when they win on Facebook, or they'll post that they're in mediation and they'll tag the other lawyers there, or they'll check into the courthouse on Facebook. And from what I've seen, you know, it seems to work. Now, this is the family law sphere. It'll be different for your different types of law, but just putting that awareness on people's minds, I think, goes a long way in getting business.
Yes, and I can say personally, Haley, being in Charlotte also, I have many people that have come to me and say, I need a family law attorney. And I'll say, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole, but Haley is your girl.
Yes, you have. Thank you.
Yes, no, and that's a lot because of the awareness and, you know, making sure that people are, you know what you do every day. So great. Thank you, Haley. So next is kind of our theme. And just so y'all know, this is professional development ABA Young Lawyers Division's first event for this bar year. So again, thank y'all for coming. And our goal for this year, our theme is actionable. So we want our members to take away at least 1, 2, or 3 actionable steps that they can do today, and not just attend this and everything go in one ear and out the other. We want to be able to give y'all practical skills that you can utilize and take away from this. So what I'd like for our panelists to do is provide, maybe 1 or 2, because I would like to get to some questions if we can, tips for our members of the audience that they can implement today, right after this program, to improve their own business development and or marketing strategies. Candice, would you share what your thoughts are on that?
Sure. I think, most importantly is making sure that it's a priority, right? Carving the time. It's one thing to say, yep, I'm going to go on the ABA webinar and I'm going to hear these things. And then tomorrow you're back into your brief. You spend the whole day working on the brief and you never get around to business development, because as we all know, as practicing attorneys, there's always the next assignment. There's always the next thing that we can and should be working on. But business development, particularly as you grow in your career, is so important. So make it part of your daily routine. Just like you take out time to input your time, just like you take out time to go out to lunch, put 30 minutes aside, 15 minutes aside, whatever is really doable, and commit to that just for business development. I think that's one thing that particularly young attorneys do not do. Literally put it on your calendar, 30 minutes, business development. And what that looks like may be different for each of you, but that first action item of taking the time aside, I think is extremely important. Some things that I did once I started doing that is I had a list of former clients or potential clients or people that, I aspired to potentially be my client. And during that 30 minutes, I'd send an email or give a call or send a card, just to get into the practice of developing my business development, daily.
Great. Yes, absolutely. That is a great actionable step. So everyone be able to do that right after this, just 30 minutes a day, put it in your calendar. There we go. Actionable step. Thanks, Candice. Haley, what's your opinion?
I have 2. I would brainstorm organizations to become involved in, whether it's through the bar or your larger community. I have been in the past involved in several committees on our bar association, and I've received numerous referrals through people that were also on those committees with me, because I practice family law, somebody else practices criminal law. They have a client that needs a family law attorney. Well, they say, oh, you know what, let me reach out to Haley. And that, that just pays dividends. And then my second one would be to evaluate your online presence. This might not be applicable for everybody, but it is, in family law, criminal law, civil, some types of civil, but reviews are important now. And it's, I do begrudge this, but our firm had an issue a while back with opposing parties posting negative reviews of various attorneys online. And, we ignored it for a long time, but then we started to think, well, what if this is having a negative impact? Somebody gets a referral to Haley White, they Google my name, and there's just this scathing review of someone that I've never represented, but I represented their wife or their husband. So evaluate your online presence. You may have no online presence, and reach out to the clients that you have a good relationship with and ask if they would post a review of you online. I know a lot of firms will send that automatically. What did you think? Leave us a review. It feels weird, but think about all the things that you use reviews for now. I mean, everything on Amazon. You want to go to a restaurant, you look up the reviews. Doctors have reviews. So just being more aware of that, creating attorney profiles on the various websites, things like that. I think those are 2 things that pretty easy that you could do today.
Great. Yes, love those. Thank you, Haley. Stephanie?
Yeah. So I think depending where you are in your career, maybe some actionable steps might be different. So I think if you're fresh out of law school and new in the legal field, maybe finding a mentor. And I don't mean like go knock on somebody's door and sit and say, will you be my mentor? I think it's more practical in terms of, hey, do you have 15 minutes to sit and talk with me and ask questions, right? Ask them how they got to be where they are. And 9 times out of 10, people are more than happy to share their experiences that you can learn from, right? And I think if you make a habit of it and asking questions, you'll find somebody who you can trust who will help give you guidance. My mentor here at the firm, one of his best advice to me was always like, stay in your lane, run your race. Don't compare yourself to other people because everybody's race is different, right? So, I think that's something that has helped me throughout my career. Anytime I get frustrated, I have to focus on me and my race and my lane. And I think in terms of actionable steps to market yourself right now, don't be afraid to ask. If you don't ask, you will not receive. So whether it be asking a client or asking for work, I mean, as blunt as it sounds, sometimes people respect that, right? So just don't be afraid to ask and be authentic in your delivery, right? I think if you're genuine, people will reciprocate that. And I think when you are faking, like trying to market something else, but in reality, what you're looking for is work, people are going to see right through it and not really reciprocate or respond in kind. So I think don't be afraid to ask for work, and being authentic and genuine in your delivery. And then if you're starting out in your career, I think finding a mentor who can give you direction is huge. But other than that, I think what the other panelists have discussed in terms of checking your online presence is huge. You'd be surprised what you find on Google. But marketing yourself online through Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever it may be, helps drive attention. And any attention usually is good attention and will help you generate business either in your private practice or in your big firm. I think it helps a lot.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stephanie. All right, now it's time for Q&A. It looks like we have a couple questions from the live chat. So this one is from Jay Peace. He says, for the solo practitioner, is there any value in connecting / networking with large firm lawyers for possible referrals? How can one benefit from without going through any formal certification as a disadvantaged business status as an obviously a woman-owned sole practitioner business? And so, yeah, so hopefully the panelists, can y'all see the question?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Anyone feel like starting out with responding?
Yeah, I will, Haley. I think there is absolutely value in connecting and networking with large firm lawyers. I'm at a mid-sized firm. We've got about probably, 50 lawyers. But if we have a conflict, which we often do have a conflict, I don't have any, I would absolutely send the client to a solo practitioner. And I think that's probably true for many larger firms. And then, the relationships you develop, you might also get a mentor out of the networking or even a friend. So I think there's absolutely value in connecting with large firms.
Wonderful. Thanks, Haley. Stephanie?
Yeah, no, I agree with what Haley just said. I find a lot of times people, they know what I do, but they don't realize that I defend corporations and businesses. So they'll call me and say, oh, I want to file suit. And I have to explain to them that's not exactly what I do, but I'm more than happy to put you in contact with somebody this is what they specialize in. So I think sole practitioners can definitely benefit from networking with larger firms and developing those relationships. And I also know that a lot of companies like to provide business to minority or female owned businesses. So that's also something you might want to look into to help drive some business.
Great. Candice, anything else to add?
No, I totally agree that it's certainly worthwhile, not only to network with large firm lawyers, but also to get involved you know, in local like bar associations or legal associations where it's kind of the same thing. You know, I may not be a family lawyer, I may be a criminal lawyer, but if someone asks me, hey, you know, do you know someone that could help us with this divorce? If I just went to a networking event where Haley was there with other lawyers, I may refer them over to Haley. So I think not just large firms, but also small organizations.
Great. Thank you, Candice. And then the second question, the live question is there a conference for some kind of business development? I think is what the question is that y'all know of.
I think there's, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think there's conferences across the country, depending on what exactly you practice in, but specifically as to diversity and diverse preferences. And as to business development, I know that there's a number of conferences, whether it be the Defense Institute or the American, I think it's called Litigation Institute, but where they get a lot of law firms together with corporations that are looking to place contracts for work. And some of those are really good networking opportunities to develop business.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. Anything to add from Haley or Candice?
Nope.
Okay. Great. So that's it for the live questions. And then we have several questions that were submitted at registration. A lot of them we've already addressed, but I'm just going to pick a few. This one, Stephanie, actually is relevant to your practice and was asked actually a couple times in different ways. But basically, the person said, how do you develop business in the insurance defense field, particularly when most clients are already accounted for? And this question also came up in various ways about if people already have representation in your state, but there was one specific to insurance defense.
Yeah, so I think that you never take any contact for granted. They may have been working with a firm or an attorney for 20 years, but sometimes people take that for granted and tend to not foster that relationship. I think Haley is the one who said you plant the seed and you water it and it grows, but if you don't keep watering it, it's going to die, right? So I think that I give every client the same importance, whether it's a high-ranking vice president of claims or if it's a low-lying adjuster, because those adjusters in this insurance defense industry, they go from one insurance company to another, or back to private practice. A lot of adjusters were lawyers before, and it's a large industry, but it's almost like a very small network. So I think that if you give everybody the attention and the the resources they deserve, they're going to 9 times out of 10 pay it back, pay it forward, right? So they're not gonna, maybe next time they get a case, not give it to the same firm they've been giving work to for the last 20 years, because maybe that firm isn't giving them the right attention and the right service, and they might give you a chance, and you'll be surprised. You'll get a try case, and I give free legal advice all the time. I tell people, call me at any hour of the night with any question. I'm more than happy to help you. Inevitably, that free legal advice might turn into a chance at one trial case, right? And that one case is your chance to prove yourself. And I think in the insurance industry, a lot of people, like, there's a lot of gatekeeping and people saying, that's my client or my insurance carrier. And I faced a lot of that in the beginning of my career. But what I found was, and kind of tried and true, right? People want to do business with their friends. So if you foster that friendship and that relationship, inevitably they're going to think of you the next time they have a case, even if the client or the carrier is spoken for by somebody else. I think that you will be given a chance inevitably, and you should, like I said, persist and try to excel when given the opportunity.
Great. Yeah, no, thank you, Stephanie. It looks like we got another live question as we were turning into the pre-registration question, so we'll answer this one. It's from Jennifer. What do you wish you knew at an earlier stage in your career, including during law school, that you would have found beneficial?
I'll just kind of, I think I spoke about this a little bit earlier, but I really wish I would have focused on business development earlier. I wish that I would have understood that as, you know, an integral part of my job, my duties, my responsibilities, right? When you're in law school or fresh out of law school, you're really focusing, as you should be, on doing a good job, on impressing the partners, on giving good work product. But you really should simultaneously be putting yourself out there, engaging on the various marketing efforts that we've discussed today. I mean, right from the beginning, those connections that you make even with other first-year attorneys or second-year attorneys can turn into something fruitful in the future. Like your legal career is going to be long. So for some of us, so, you know, plant the seeds, water, and start early.
Absolutely. Thank you, Candice. Stephanie, what about you?
Yeah, I think early on in my career, I probably was a little insecure about when it was appropriate to answer an email or take a phone call, and didn't know if it was my role. And I think, you know, as a younger, looking back, I wish I would have been a little more confident, a little more assertive, and, you know, demonstrated my abilities early on, whether it's to your supervisors internally or to clients externally. You know, I think speaking up and demonstrating your knowledge and understanding of the law will help earn your respect. But like Candice said, developing your business or network early on also helps. I don't, you know, think enough young lawyers think about how can we market our services. And I think that helps in terms of demonstrating your knowledge to clients and speaking up and being vocal. I think that helps long-term too.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stephanie. Haley?
It's a loaded question, Jennifer. So what I wish I knew at an earlier stage in my career, I remember thinking just everyone knew so much more than I did. They knew exactly what they were doing. You know, they knew the law backward and forward. They could do this in their sleep. But what over the years, as what I've come to learn and realize in being in the prep meetings with the intelligent, genius, top attorneys, and it just takes hard work. And most of us still don't really know. We know what we're doing, but we don't know what we're doing. We're all just getting by. And I think what Stephanie said earlier, kind of fake it till you make it. I think you have to do that. You have to come across as confident, because you can say the same thing two different ways. You can say it as sort of a question, or you can say it as a sentence. And when you say it as a sentence, that's going to go a lot farther with the judge or, you know, whoever you're talking to, than when you don't sound sure of yourself. So like what everybody else said, be assertive, be confident, even if you have to fake it. Just make sure that you're prepared and you'll go far.
Absolutely. Thank you, Haley. Well, that is about all the time we have for our program. I would like to thank the attendees for tuning in and engaging with our panel. And last but not least, thank you, Haley, Stephanie, and Candice for being with us today. You three women are outstanding. Your perspectives are unique and informative, and I hope they have given our attendees actionable steps to take for their own business development strategies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Lexi and ABA.